Let's talk about recasting. It happens all the time, and generally the audience isn't even aware that it happened. One example is Back to the Future. They had hired Eric Stoltz to play the main character, Marty McFly, iconic Marty McFly, the original skater boy.
I'm late for school!
And the director and the writer, producer, they all wanted Michael J. Fox for that role. But Michael J. Fox was tied up with family ties and he couldn't accept the role. So they hired Eric Stoltz, who had been in movies, obviously in the 80s. You probably recognize him. They shot 6 weeks with Eric as Marty McFly until something happened, and essentially they found out that they could get Michael J. Fox, and Michael J. Fox could work both Back to the Future and Family Ties. They decided to fire Eric Stoltz and bring in Michael J. Fox. I remember reading that essentially the comedic tone that Stoltz had just wasn't exactly what the filmmaker was expecting. And what they wanted is what Michael J. Fox, delivers in that movie, that specific tone. I would imagine that maybe Stoltz was playing it a little more straight, a little less lighthearted, but I don't know.
With Eric Stoltz, who's a terrific actor, really good actor. But what was happening was that, Eric... there's a certain goofiness to it that I don't think Eric was really ready to embrace. Eric is talented enough to do anything that he wants to do, but I just think there was a silliness to the role that they'd kind of pictured me.
According to IMDb, it cost $3 million to reshoot all the scenes that they had already shot with Eric Stoltz and to reshoot them with Michael J. Fox. So $3 million in the 80s is quite a bit of money, but I think we all kind of agree that they made the right choice there because the movie, was extremely successful. It's a fun movie to watch and rewatch, and Michael J. Fox's performance is great, and it's a big part of why that movie is so successful. The recast must have been, gut-wrenching for Eric Stoltz, right? He's probably going in there a little bit nervous as kind of a young actor, and maybe he's feeling that what he's giving isn't exactly what the director wants. So I'm sure that was really hard for him to, be fired. Even though it wasn't his fault, right? All you can really do is go in there and do your best. And also for the director, Robert Zemeckis. Zemeckis. Zemeckis, okay. I would imagine that Zemeckis as a director was also having some inner turmoil there, right? He was probably thinking like, okay, is it fully working? Something in my gut's telling me it's not fully working. What do I listen to? Oh geez, we've already shot for 6 weeks. We've already spent a bunch of money. Like, is it too late? What do I do? That would be a hard position to be in as well. I don't think it was widely known that Eric Stoltz had been originally cast in the movie and that he had even shot. I think later, several decades after the movie was released, those rumblings became more public knowledge and there was more, articles or internet blogs written about it. In 2008, Peter Jackson was filming his adaptation of The Lovely Bones, and a certain role was recast. No, it was not Stanley Tucci, because Stanley Tucci was so creepy and so good in that role. It wasn't him. It was the role of the father of the protagonist, and I don't remember what that role was called. I'm going to go with Jack because that's a very common, dad name in movies. So the dad's role was recast. Originally, it was Ryan Gosling. As you may know, the movie turned out with Mark Wahlberg as the dad.
Grampy taught me to do this, and now I'm teaching you. We're creating something here for us, something special.
I know.
But originally Ryan Gosling was hired and did some prep for the movie. So Peter Jackson fired Ryan Gosling and brought on Mark Wahlberg, I think literally the day before the shoot started. In 2008, Gosling kind of talked about what happened with The Hollywood Reporter. We had a different idea of how the character should look. I really believed he should be 210 pounds. Jackson disagreed and dropped Gosling days before production began in 2007. We didn't talk very much during the pre-production process, which was the problem, Gosling said. It was a huge movie, and there's so many things to deal with, and he couldn't deal with the actors individually. I just showed up to set, and I had gotten it wrong. Then I was fat and unemployed. I don't think he necessarily made a mistake, right? He's kind of saying like, this is how I saw the character, so that's what I went and did. Turned out that was not what Jackson wanted. Another potential factor for why Gosling was replaced comes from Jackson's, I think, wife and collaborator, Fran Walsh. And she basically said that it comes down to that Ryan Gosling was too young, that Gosling felt that he was too young. I think he was 26. And the daughter, she's like, I don't know, 13, 11 or something. She's quite young. And Gosling felt like, I'm too young for this role. And apparently Jackson and Walsh didn't think that his age was an issue. Ryan came to us 2 or 3 times and said, I'm not the right person for this role. I'm too young, she recalled. And we said, no, we can age you up. We can thin your hair. We were very keen. It wasn't until we were in pre-production and we had the cast there, it became increasingly clear he was so uncomfortable moving forward, and we began to feel he was not right. It was our blindness, the desire to make it work no matter what. So yeah, very interesting. Obviously, Ryan being recast didn't affect his career long term, and it sounds like he was, pretty gracious about it from what we've heard since then. Imagine being in a movie and then there's a sequel and they decide to recast you and replace you. And now in the age of the internet, everybody knows about it. Okay, so that's an exaggeration. Not everybody knows, but everyone that goes on to watch the sequel knows that you're not in it and are kind of wondering like, hey, I liked you in the last movie, why aren't you in this one? And then you have to field those questions from people, even though it was not your decision to not come back. It's different when the actor doesn't want to come back. I think an example of this is Jodie Foster in Silence of the Lambs. She did not return for the second movie, Enter the Dragon. Well, that's not right. Red Dragon? She did not come back for Red Dragon. And I think a lot of that has to do with 2 very different directors. It was a different director on that second one than the first one. And I think maybe she just wasn't interested in what they were doing. So she didn't come back. They recast that character, Clarice Starling, as Julianne Moore. And the second movie was not good. And I think the worst situation is when an actor has been in a movie and then sequels are being made and they're expecting to come back, and then the studio or somebody decides, let's recast them. And sometimes the studio doesn't even tell them that they're not bringing them back, which I think is terrible. I feel like you have to at least tell someone, we're going in a different direction or something like that. But even that is pretty bad, right? It makes you wonder, why not? They were good enough the first time. Why aren't they good enough to be in the sequels? What has changed? So maybe you heard about what happened in Independence Day 2. The first Independence Day came out in 96, and then the sequel came out, 20 years later. And if you remember, Independence Day, the young daughter of the president was played by Mae Whitman. And Mae Whitman has gone on to continue acting, right? She was a child in that first movie. She's been in that show Parenthood, Arrested Development. She's been in a bunch of movies and other things since then. And apparently, it sounds like the studio, which I think was Fox just decided to not bring her back. And they recast the role and they gave it to someone else. They gave it to Micah Monroe, who you may know from the movie It Follows. And I don't know if this is true, but the internet has speculated that, that role, she was supposed to be a love interest for Liam Hemsworth's character. And, maybe the studio is thinking like, oh, the love interest role, that's very different than what Mae was doing in the first movie where she was literally a child and the president's daughter. Now we need someone that we can expect to fill that love interest role, the hot young thing, the hot young blonde. Interesting that they recast and changed her hair color. Just saying. This has never been formally commented on by Mae Whitman, although she has liked and I think retweeted a few tweets where people were showing that they were upset and questioning why Fox had made this decision. And I think by doing that, she's kind of saying like, yeah, I agree. I also wondered why they recast me. Doesn't seem fair. The most disappointing example of recasting comes to the Disney Channel original movie series, Halloween Town. You have probably seen them. Kimberly J. Brown played Marnie in Halloween Town, the first Halloween Town, the second Halloween Town, and the third Halloween Town. And then they decided to recast her for the fourth Halloween Town. And once again, the studio went with someone that is considered more conventionally attractive and also happens to be blonde, which I think says a lot about how backwards some of these studios are. They went with Sarah Paxton, and it sounds like they didn't even have the decency to tell Kimberly J. Brown why they weren't bringing her back. She's been very polite about it online, and I think her official answer is kind of like, yeah, I don't know why they didn't bring me back. I was down to do it. I'm not sure what happened there, which is very polite of her. to cover for that damn mouse.